Daniel and Clara had been married for 10 years. To their neighbors, their colleagues, even their friends, they were what people called the perfect couple. They lived in a quiet suburban estate on the edge of town. Their home wasn't grand, a two-bedroom duplex painted cream with a small front garden where Clara planted hibiscus flowers. In the evenings, when the sun dipped low, the flowers caught the fading light and glowed like little flames. Inside, the house felt warm and lived in. The living room walls carried framed memories, their wedding portrait, Daniel in his black suit, Clara radiant in white lace, her veil flowing down her shoulders, pictures of their daughter Anna as a chubby toddler, and photos of small family vacations, at the zoo, by the beach, laughing under an umbrella. The air inside the home always carried a faint sweetness, thanks to Clara's lavender candles. She bought them from the market every month, and whenever friends visited, they always remarked, "Your house smells like peace." But the truth was, peace isn't always as steady as it seems. Clara worked at the local secondary school, teaching English and literature. Her days began early, long before Daniel and Anna were awake. At 5:30 a.m., she would rise quietly, tie her hair in a scarf, and prepare breakfast. She liked to pack Anna's lunch herself. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches or jollof rice in a small lunchbox with a handwritten note tucked inside. "Good luck on your quiz today. Love, Mom." At school, Clara was known for her bright smile and her colorful Ankara dresses. That particular morning, she wore a deep blue and yellow patterned dress. As she slipped it on, she remembered the story behind it. The tailor had originally made a mistake with the neckline. It was far too wide, slipping awkwardly off her shoulders. Clara had complained, and after much back and forth, the tailor redid the dress. Clara had been so frustrated at the time that she swore never to go back. But now, each time she wore the dress, she remembered that quarrel and laughed at herself. Patience, Clara. Sometimes even mistakes can turn into something beautiful. In school, her classroom buzzed with energy. The whiteboard still had the notes from the previous lesson, and the sound of teenagers whispering and giggling filled the air. Clara was strict but kind. She would scold a boy for sleeping at the back, then moments later, bend down to encourage a shy girl struggling with her reading. Her students adored her because she believed in them. She wasn't just a teacher, she was a confidant, a second mother. Whenever one of them brought her a flower plucked from the roadside or scribbled "Best Teacher" in the corner of their notebook, her heart swelled. That morning, as she leaned against her desk in her blue Ankara dress, she read aloud from Shakespeare's Macbeth. Her voice carried passion, rising and falling like waves. The students listened, caught between confusion and fascination. Clara, smiling, "Now, who can tell me what Macbeth really wanted? Was it power or was it peace?" Hands shot up. Laughter followed. For Clara, these little sparks of curiosity made every long day worth it. Daniel's mornings were slower. He liked to linger over his coffee, scanning through emails before leaving for work. His office was in the city center, inside a glass-fronted bank building where everything smelled of polished wood and air conditioning. As a mid-level manager, Daniel's days were consumed with clients, meetings, and targets. That particular day, he had a 10 a.m. meeting with a wealthy businessman looking to secure a loan for a new hotel project. Daniel sat across from the man in the conference room, his tie perfectly knotted, his pen clicking softly between his fingers. His supervisor, Mr. Roberts, a stern man with graying hair, sat at the head of the table. "Daniel," said Mr. Roberts, "walk Mr. Peterson through the repayment options." "Certainly," Daniel replied confidently. "Sir, if you choose the 10-year plan, your monthly repayment would be far more manageable. It will give your project enough breathing space to grow before the heavier costs set in." Mr. Peterson nodded, clearly impressed. By the end of the meeting, Daniel had secured not just the man's business, but also Mr. Roberts' approving smile. That approval meant a lot to Daniel. He was ambitious, always pushing himself harder, always trying to prove that he was climbing the ladder. But ambition, like a hungry fire,
has a way of consuming more than just the hours in a day. That Sunday, as they did every week, Daniel and Clara walked into church together. Clara's green Ankara dress swayed softly as she held Daniel's hand. Anna, now 14, trailed behind, rolling her eyes at her parents' public affection. Anna whispered to her parents, "Seriously, Mom, Dad, must you hold hands everywhere?" Daniel, chuckling, replied her, "When you find love like this, Anna, you'll understand." Their laughter echoed softly in the church aisle. Neighbors admired them, friends envied them. Even Clara sometimes whispered a prayer at night, "Lord, thank you for this life, for this love, for this family." But beneath the smiles, beneath the matching Sunday outfits and the lavender-scented home, the seeds of distance had already been sown.
Daniel and Clara looked like the dream couple. But dreams can sometimes be illusions, and the cracks in their story were already beginning to form. Cracks no one could see, not even Clara herself. The shift in Daniel and Clara's marriage did not happen overnight. Cracks in relationships rarely do. They appear slowly, like faint lines in glass, harmless at first glance, but deepening with each passing day until one day, the whole thing shatters. For Clara, it began with dinner. At first, Daniel always came home late, but late still meant 8 o'clock. Clara would keep the food warm in the oven, and when he walked in, they would eat together. She didn't complain. She knew banking was demanding. But soon, 8 o'clock became 9. 9 became 10. And some nights, Daniel didn't walk through the door until past midnight. Clara would sit at the dining table, arms folded across her chest, staring at the untouched plates of rice and stew. She could hear the ticking of the wall clock, each second a reminder that she was waiting for someone who seemed to be in another world. One evening, as Daniel finally walked in, his tie loosened, jacket hanging over his arm, exhaustion written on his face, Clara looked at him, her patience stretched thin. In a quiet tone, Clara said, "Do you even remember what time dinner is anymore?" Daniel, dropping his briefcase, sighing, said, "Clara, please, I've had a long day." Clara, shaking her head, replied, "And I've had a long night, waiting. Do you think Anna doesn't notice? Do you think she doesn't ask where her father is?" Daniel, frustrated, said, "I'm doing this for us, for Anna's future. Must I explain myself every night?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara lowered her eyes, too tired to argue. She simply cleared the dishes and went to bed. That night, they lay back to back, a gulf of silence between them. Daniel and Clara looked like the dream couple. But dreams can sometimes be illusions, and the cracks in their story were already beginning to form. Cracks no one could see, not even Clara herself. The shift in Daniel and Clara's marriage did not happen overnight. Cracks in relationships rarely do. They appear slowly, like faint lines in glass, harmless at first glance, but deepening with each passing day until one day, the whole thing shatters. For Clara, it began with dinner. At first, Daniel always came home late, but late still meant 8 o'clock. Clara would keep the food warm in the oven, and when he walked in, they would eat together. She didn't complain. She knew banking was demanding. But soon, 8 o'clock became 9. 9 became 10. And some nights, Daniel didn't walk through the door until past midnight. Clara would sit at the dining table, arms folded across her chest, staring at the untouched plates of rice and stew. She could hear the ticking of the wall clock, each second a reminder that she was waiting for someone who seemed to be in another world. One evening, as Daniel finally walked in, his tie loosened, jacket hanging over his arm, exhaustion written on his face, Clara looked at him, her patience stretched thin.
In a quiet tone, Clara said, "Do you even remember what time dinner is anymore?" Daniel, dropping his briefcase, sighing, said, "Clara, please, I've had a long day." Clara, shaking her head, replied, "And I've had a long night, waiting. Do you think Anna doesn't notice? Do you think she doesn't ask where her father is?" Daniel, frustrated, said, "I'm doing this for us, for Anna's future. Must I explain myself every night?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara lowered her eyes, too tired to argue. She simply cleared the dishes and went to bed. That night, they lay back to back, a gulf of silence between them. Their daughter Anna. While Daniel chased targets, Clara wrestled with loneliness. After long days of teaching, she came home to silence. She would cook, clean, prepare lessons for the next day, but the absence of conversation weighed heavily on her. Sometimes she sat by the window in her bedroom, staring out at the estate's quiet streets. She could hear the distant laughter of neighbors, couples strolling hand in hand, children chasing footballs. She wondered if anyone knew how heavy her house had become. One afternoon at school, her colleague, Mrs. James, noticed the tired look in her eyes. Mrs. James, concerned, asked, "Clara, are you all right? You've been so quiet lately." Clara, forcing a smile, replied, "I'm fine, just tired. Too many essays to grade." Mrs. James responded gently, Sometimes it's not the papers that tire us, but the burden at home. Just take care, okay?" Clara's smile faltered. She looked away, blinking back tears. The breaking point came one Friday night. Daniel stumbled in at nearly 1 a.m., smelling faintly of alcohol. Clara had waited again, this time determined to not let the moment pass. She stood by the dining table, arms crossed, eyes blazing. She angrily said, "Daniel, this is not a home anymore. Do you realize you haven't had dinner with us in 2 weeks? Do you realize Anna barely talks to you anymore?" Daniel, dropping his keys, rubbing his forehead, said, "Clara, please, not tonight. I've had enough stress at work." Clara, with a cracking voice, asked, "And what about my stress, Daniel? What about the stress of being married to a ghost? Do you know how humiliating it feels when Anna asks me if her father still cares?" Daniel was beginning to lose his composure, and raising his voice, he said, "I said I'm doing this for us, for you, for Anna. Why can't you understand that?" By this time, tears were streaming down Anna's cheeks. However, she managed to ask, "And what if, in chasing the future, you lose the present?" The screen lit up. Clara froze. The name that flashed across the screen made her stomach twist. Angela? Heart. Her heart began to pound. Slowly, almost unwillingly, she reached for the phone. Another vibration, another message. "Angela, Heart, I miss you. Are you still coming tonight?" Clara's hands trembled so violently that she almost dropped the phone. Her breathing grew shallow. Her chest burned as though someone had ripped the air from her lungs. She unlocked the phone, her fingers moving with the certainty of a woman who already knew the truth but desperately wished she was wrong. The screen opened to a string of messages, words that should have belonged to her alone, words drenched with intimacy, laced with promises. "Last night was magical. You make me feel alive again. Can't wait to see you this weekend." Clara gasped, clutching her chest. The room spun. Her knees buckled, and she sank into the couch, phone still in her shaking hands. Hot tears blurred her vision. The storm outside raged louder, as though the heavens themselves wept with her. The door creaked open at 12:15 a.m. Daniel stepped in, brushing rainwater from his suit. He looked tired, disheveled, and slightly surprised to see the living room light still on. Then he froze. Clara was sitting there, eyes swollen from crying. Daniel's phone clutched in her trembling hand. Daniel's voice was low and cautious as he asked, "Clara, why are you holding my phone?" Clara's voice was breaking as she trembled with rage. "Don't, Daniel, don't you dare ask me that. You should be asking yourself what she is doing on your phone. Angela, with the heart emoji?" Daniel's face was drained of color. He opened his mouth, then shut it. His briefcase slipped from his hand, hitting the tiled floor with a dull thud. Clara, screaming now, tears spilling freely. "How could you, Daniel? After everything we built, everything we dreamed of, wasn't I enough for you? Wasn't your daughter enough?" Her voice echoed through the house, carried by the storm outside. Daniel ran a hand through his wet hair, pacing, his voice laced with desperation. "Clara, please, it's not what you think." Clara, snapping, slamming the phone on the table, bellowed, "Not what I think? The messages are right here. Do you want me to read them aloud? Last night was magical. Tell me, Daniel, was it magical while I sat here waiting? Was it magical when your daughter asked why her father doesn't come home anymore?"
Clara woke before dawn, the aftermath of last night lodged in her chest like a stone. She moved like someone learning the shape of her own house all over again. The hallway seemed longer, the kitchen colder. She brewed tea, not because she wanted it, but because the ritual anchored her. Anna's room was quiet. The door was shut. There was a small note on the dining table where Daniel's phone had been. "I'm so sorry." The handwriting looked like his, but the letters were empty. Days passed like pages torn from a calendar. At breakfast, Daniel sat at the table but did not eat. He stared into his tea as if it contained instructions for repair. Clara moved through the motions of mourning, lunch boxes, uniform checks for Anna, and a kiss pressed to a forehead that felt foreign on her lips. Neighbors noticed. Mrs. Kalu across the way saw Clara leave with Anna in the morning and later told a friend, who told another friend. The estate, small and intimate, began to murmur. "Did you hear?" became the passive chorus. Some looked toward the house with pity, others with the animal curiosity of people who lean forward when other people stumble. At work, words became weapons and shields. Clara poured herself into lesson plans, but her voice had new edges when she spoke. Daniel's boss noticed the blankness that sometimes crossed his face during meetings. He made a joke about stress that landed like a stone. Anna began to act small and large at once. She slept less and retreated from friends. Then one afternoon, she slammed a locker door so hard the clasps cracked. A teacher called Clara in for a meeting. Mrs. James, in a soft but worried tone, told Clara, "Anna seems distracted in class. She's failing to submit assignments and she's withdrawn during group work." Clara, bracing up, replied with a controlled voice, "She's had a rough week. I'll talk to her." Later in the day, when Clara picked her daughter from school before they headed home, Anna clung to her seatbelt and wept. Anna, sobbing, asked her mom, "Why would Daddy do this? Did he stop loving us?" Clara, hugging her, replied, "I don't know, my love, but we are together. That won't change."
Clara turned to her pastor first. They sat in the church office, the Bible between them like an ancient witness. The pastor began, "Marriage is covenant, not contract. There is room for forgiveness. But forgiveness is not a magic wand. It requires repentance and action." Clara replied, "He repented when I caught him, but what about the nights I looked out the window and he was not there?" The pastor spoke in parables of mercy and duty, reminding her of vows, scriptures about love that bears all things. His voice offered a moral path, but he also asked her to consider the cost. Could she forgive without losing herself? Could she model forgiveness for Anna without teaching her that betrayal was to be tolerated? Daniel in his shame agreed to counseling. They found a counselor, a calm woman who did not preach but asked surgical questions. During their first counseling meeting, she asked Daniel, "Why did you seek comfort outside? What were you not getting at home?"
Daniel answered with a small voice. I felt invisible. I felt inadequate. At work, I was a person who could deliver numbers. At home, I felt like a man whose value had been diminished, whose efforts were invisible. Then she asked Clara, "What do you need to see to believe in repair?" Clara replied, "Transparency, time, a willingness to lose the privileges of privacy that conceal betrayal. I need him to invite me back into the small things, the dinners he missed, the bedtime stories he skipped. I need him to show he chose us." The counselor offered them a framework for reasoning that would appeal to anyone who values both justice and mercy. Rebuilding trust requires 1. Truth-telling without minimization, 2. Accountability structures, no secret phones, open calendars for a time, 3. Reparative actions that match words, and 4. Time. There are no shortcuts. Now the big questions were placed on the table like a set of scales. Stay and try to rebuild, separate temporarily to heal, or leave and start anew. Each choice carried costs. Clara considered them painstakingly. If she stayed, she risked years of second-guessing, a life split into before and after. She might model forgiveness, and maybe the family would heal, but she would also be living with the memory of betrayal like an uninvited guest at every dinner. If they separated, they could buy space to see clearly. A trial separation lets each person face themselves. Daniel might learn what he's willing to lose. Clara might learn whether being without him is a life she can build alone. But separation risks normalizing absence and could harden feelings into an unhealable divide. If Clara left, she would be choosing self-preservation. She would protect Anna from future betrayals, assert her dignity, and face the pragmatic challenges of single life. Finances, childcare.
It was Anna's speech and prize-giving day, the biggest event of the school year. Parents filled the decorated hall, clapping as students walked up to collect certificates and awards. Banners fluttered in school colors, and the air buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the smell of freshly baked meat pies from the canteen. Anna had been chosen to give a short speech about what family means to me. Clara had helped her rehearse the lines at home. Anna's speech was simple, sweet, about love, support, and togetherness. But Clara worried. Anna's eyes had been heavy in recent weeks, her smile forced. Clara sat in the audience, her Ankara dress crisp, her face carefully composed. Beside her, there was an empty chair, Daniel's seat. At 11 a.m. sharp, Daniel walked in. For once, he was not late. He wore a navy blue suit, tie neatly knotted, face nervous. He caught Clara's eye, but she looked straight ahead. He lowered himself into the empty chair. The air between them was thick. Two people sitting side by side, yet oceans apart. When Anna stepped onto the stage, applause filled the hall. She adjusted the microphone, her small hands trembling slightly. She scanned the audience until her eyes rested on her parents. Her voice cracked as she began. Family means love. Family means being there for each other, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. She paused, swallowing hard. The audience leaned in. Anna, with tears welling in her throat, continued, Family means having dinner together, laughing together, praying together. Family means not feeling alone. The hall fell silent. Clara's throat tightened. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Anna blinked rapidly, her composure breaking. Anna, with a voice shaking, kept talking. But sometimes family forgets. Sometimes family hurts. And when they do,
You pray. You pray they remember what love really means. The hall erupted in sympathetic applause, though many parents exchanged knowing glances. Clara buried her face in her hands. Daniel sat rigid, his knuckles white against his knees. For Anna, this was not just a school speech. It was a cry for help. After the program, families spilled into the courtyard, snapping pictures beneath balloons and banners. Children laughed, parents posed. But in one corner, beneath the shade of a mango tree, Clara stood stiffly, arms crossed, her face stormy. Daniel approached cautiously. Daniel, with a low voice, said, "Clara, we need to talk." Clara, eyes blazing, replied, "Not here, Daniel. Not now." But Daniel, pleading, persuaded, "We can't keep living like this. Anna's breaking. You saw her speech. She's telling us we're destroying her."
The decision at Anna's school had changed everything, and yet, in some ways, nothing at all. Daniel moved back fully into the house, but the return was not a warm embrace. It was more like a stranger moving into familiar rooms. Clara watched him constantly. Every phone call, every late email, every shift in his tone. The air was heavy with conditional forgiveness. Anna, however, glowed with cautious joy. For her, Daddy was back at the dinner table, at least for now. She would giggle during meals, recounting stories from school. Daniel would smile, listening with a tenderness that was almost desperate, as though clinging to every second to prove he was worthy of sitting there. But beneath the laughter, Clara's eyes were always searching, measuring. Daniel threw himself into proving his worth. At work, he was more focused than ever. His colleagues noticed. He no longer lingered after hours unnecessarily. He left promptly, at 5, sometimes even earlier, claiming family commitments. One evening, during a team meeting, his supervisor teased him, saying, "Daniel, these days you're the first to leave the office. What's the secret?" Daniel, smiling faintly, replied, "The secret? Realizing that a home can collapse while you're busy building an office." The room went quiet. Some chuckled awkwardly, others nodded knowingly. Clara and Daniel continued attending marriage counseling. The first session was stiff. Clara sat with her arms folded, lips pressed tightly. Daniel fidgeted with his watch. The counselor, a calm woman in her 40s named Mrs. Parker, leaned forward and spoke softly. "This room is a mirror. What you bring here will show you who you really are. Clara, you bring hurt. Daniel, you bring regret. But if this mirror only shows wounds,
And so, the aftermath of a broken vow is not a neat picture of healing. It is messy. It is nights of doubt, mornings of effort, afternoons of small victories, and evenings of hidden fears. Clara chose to stay, but staying is not the end. It is the beginning of a harder journey, the daily test of whether love can truly rise from the ashes of betrayal. Daniel chose to fight for his family, but fighting is not proof. It is merely intention. The proof lies in constancy, in transparency, in years of choosing again and again not to repeat the same mistake. And Anna, the silent witness, carries in her heart the hope that two broken adults can piece themselves together, if not for themselves, then for the little girl who needs them. But the question remains, can love truly recover after trust is shattered? Or is forgiveness only a pause before the final goodbye? Months turned into a year. The rhythm of life slowly returned to the Thompson household. Anna was thriving, brighter, happier, her laughter once again filling the home. Clara had begun to relax, though not fully. Daniel had been consistent: counseling sessions, transparency, family time. He even became an advocate at work, warning younger colleagues not to trade family for fleeting pleasure. To the outside world, they looked restored. Even Clara sometimes wondered if healing was truly happening. It happened on a rainy Thursday evening. Daniel had been delayed at work. Clara, waiting at the dining table with Anna, felt the familiar twist in her stomach. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Running late. Meeting with client. Be home soon. Her heart raced. The words were innocent, but they carried ghosts. The last time she had read something similar, her world had collapsed. By the time Daniel walked through the door, damp from the rain, tie loosened, Clara was a storm waiting to break. Clara said coldly, "Meeting, huh? With which client?" Daniel, tired yet surprised, calmly said, "Clara, not this again. I told you, a client, the proposal for the merger." Clara, by this time, was carried by her rising emotion. "You expect me to just believe you." Anna peeked from the living room, her face pale. Daniel noticed and lowered his tone. Pleading, he responded, "Clara, please, don't do this in front of her. I swear, there's no one else. Not anymore. Not ever again." Clara's fury exploded. Clara was now shaking. "Do you know what it's like to sleep beside someone you can't trust? To look at your child and wonder if you're raising her to think betrayal is normal? Do you have any idea the damage you've done to me, to us?" Daniel's face crumpled. His shoulders sagged as though the weight of his sin pressed harder than ever. He walked closer, slowly, his voice breaking. "Clara, I know you have no reason to believe me. I know my word is dirt to you. But I've been fighting every single day to earn back just one drop of your trust. I don't want to collapse again. I don't want to lose you. I don't want Anna to grow up thinking her father is a liar. If I fail again, I'll walk away. But please, don't punish me for a crime I didn't commit this time." The silence that followed was suffocating. Clara's chest heaved with sobs she tried to hold back. Rain lashed against the windows. Anna clutched her teddy bear tighter. Finally, Clara sat down heavily, covering her face with her hands. Her voice was muffled, weary, but deliberate. As she said, "Daniel, I don't know if I will ever love you the way I once did. I don't know if trust will ever feel natural again. But I see your effort. I see your fight. And for that, I choose to try again. Not for you, not even for Anna, but for me. Because I refuse to let bitterness define me." Daniel knelt before her, tears streaming. Daniel with a hoarse whisper, "That's all I ask. Just one more chance, one day at a time." From the corner, Anna's small voice broke the tension. Anna said softly, "Can we eat now? I prayed Daddy would come home tonight." Both parents turned to her. Clara's tears finally spilled, and Daniel pulled Anna into his arms. The three of them sat at the dining table. Not a picture of perfection, but a fragile portrait of persistence. And so, the Thompsons' story does not end with a perfect bow. Life rarely does. Instead, it ends with a choice to try again, knowing the risk of being hurt. A choice to forgive, not blindly, but cautiously. A choice to build, brick by fragile brick, the ruins of what was once broken. Betrayal is a wound that may never fully heal, but sometimes in the scar it leaves, strength is born. In the end, love is not about perfection. It is about choice. And every choice we make writes the story our children will one day tell about us.